Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Eloise. I hope everyone is doing great. So today we have another Christian Dior fragrance from their Prive line of fragrances, which is the upper echelon of the Christian Dior perfumes, and this is Ambre Nuit. I have quite a few now from the Dior Prive line, and I'll have to create a video and sort of run through them. I have some favorites. I spoke about Fève Délicieuse in a video, and I also mentioned Cuir Canage and Leather Oud in my leather video recently. And this one, Ambre Nuit, I'm really enjoying. I'm really a big fan of this one, and I've been wearing it a whole bunch. I purchased it a little used, and so you can see here there's a dent that I did not put in this bottle, but I did start with the decant before I actually went for the full bottle. So I tested the fragrance, I really enjoyed it, and I purchased this recently. And like a lot of the other fragrances in the Dior Prive line, there was a reformulation in 2018 where the fragrances were repackaged with some new branding and some bottles that look like this in shape, but were a little different. The CD was a separated C and D, while this one is connected. And even the formulas themselves are said to be different formulas, and a lot of people say that the reformulations are not as good as the original fragrances. So the original Ambre Nuit, I'll call it original, was released in 2007, and then in 2018 was the repackaging and the rebranding and the reformulations. So the decant that I purchased was no doubt the post-2018, the newer formula that I tested, and I enjoyed it. And in terms of this bottle, there was a little issue. The person who was selling this stated in the title of the listing that this was the old formulation. And it was my mistake for not looking up the batch code and sort of going with what the person was saying in the listing. And when I received the bottle and I looked up the batch code, it says that this is a 2019 bottle of Ambre Nuit. So I'm explaining this just to say that my review of the fragrance is of the post-2018 formulation, even though when I wrote to the seller and informed him that this is in fact not the old formulation, there was a little back and forth. And unless I'm missing something, when you look up a batch code, that's the year that the fragrance was formulated. That's the year that I'm going with. This is a 2019 bottle according to the batch code, but the gentleman that sold me this fragrance maintains that this is the old formulation, but the bottle does come up as being a 2019. So enough about the formulations. I know it annoys some people to talk about batch codes, but personally, I do see that fragrances suffer from reformulations. So if you're not into it, then that's fine. I do also subscribe to the notion that if you go to a perfume and you smell it and you like it, obviously that's what you're going with. You can't always seek out an older formulation or an original formulation. Some of the vintage fragrances have been reformulated 3, 4, 5 times over the years. So it is what it is. But I do enjoy looking up the batch codes. I do enjoy getting my nose on original formulations, especially when I hear reviews that explain that the original formulations are better. And with Ambre Nuit, I have heard from reviewers that the older formulation is better. So Ambre Nuit, a 2018 release from the house of Dior, like I said, in the Prive line. This is a very large 8.2 ounce bottle. I think it's 8.2. It's more than 8 ounces. And there's quite a lot of juice in here. So even with the dent, there's much to enjoy. And I really have been enjoying this. It's a very simple fragrance that reminds me of one that I recently spoke about, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The nose behind Ambre Nuit is François Dimache, and if you look at Fragrantica for the 2018 release of the fragrance, they simply list rose and amber. And if you go to the official website, it's described as an amber fragrance with hints of rose, pretty much is what this is described as. And when I saw rose in the note listing, after I tested this, after I wore it, decided that I really like it, I was surprised because I did not expect this to be a fragrance that had rose in it, damask rose to be specific. To me, this comes off like an ambery fragrance that has a very warm aspect to it. It's soft, it's powdery, and I get the benzoin in here. It's a little bit vanillic, not sweet. It's just a very soft wearing powdery fragrance that's more about being sort of a mood in a bottle, I think, than it is about being perfumey. So it's not about wearing something that smells interesting. It's more about sort of having a certain scent profile on, something very neutral, something subdued and cozy. And if I had to put a color to this, sometimes a color comes to mind. I would say that this is a cream, light tan sort of fragrance that's just very soft. At the end of the day, it's an amber, and it's a soft amber. It's not a dark amber. So I am wearing it as my scent of the day, but let's spray the decant and talk about what it smells like. So there's something really fresh about the opening, and it's fresh for a few minutes until the fragrance starts to develop. And it's not as ambery in the opening as it is when the fragrance dries down. But within minutes, I get this really nice texture to the fragrance. There's a texture that's almost slightly suede-like, which I really love about this. And that freshness goes away, which I also like. And it turns into something that feels very beige and a little powdery. And with that powderiness comes something a little bit floral. So that's where I would say rose is not, at least to my nose, is not prominent, or it's not obvious. There's damask rose in here. It's not obvious that it's a rose that peeks through. To my nose, it just feels like something a little floral because the notes in here are blended so nicely in a way that the fragrance is very round. And it's not a fragrance that has layers where I'm experiencing sort of a journey of notes. There's some movement. There's movement from that opening that's a little bit fresh until the fragrance develops within minutes. Within just a few minutes, it's obvious that it's an amber, but it's also obvious that it's not a dark amber. I like the delicate nature of the amber in here. And I like how the floral aspect is a little bit spiced. I'm not sure if there's black pepper in here, but I do like how there's a hint, just a little hint of spice. But you really have to sort of pick apart the fragrance to get all of these things that I'm talking about. Because like I said, it's not a fragrance where the notes sort of live separately in the olfactory experience where you're smelling it and you're getting a prominent rose or a strong spicy aspect either. You're getting the fragrance as a whole as this round, smooth, really cozy amber that's delicate and beigey in color. And if you bring your nose to the fragrance, you definitely get this spiced floral. You definitely get something a little bit fresh. So the overall scent profile, I would say, is a clean but cozy one. There's something a little bit fresh about it, but with this freshness comes a nice dose of soft amber. For those of you who have never gotten your nose on this, if you like fragrances like 34 Boulevard Saint Germain, I have the EDT. They are really strikingly similar. They're in the same scent profile. I think I like Ambre Nuit a little bit more, although I really enjoy this one as well from Diptyque. Both of them share a lot of aspects. They're both soft wearing amber fragrances with this hint of a floral. There's rose in here as well. And both of them have this texture. It's part of the amber. I guess there's something that's almost a little texturized. Ambers tend to have something a little dense, even though they're both soft wearing ambers. Ambers tend to have something a little dense, a tad syrupy in the base, in the backdrop, but both of them have this soft aspect. Both of them have a powdery aspect. 34 Boulevard Saint Germain, I did note, opens up fresher. It's a fresher fragrance for sure. It maintains more freshness throughout the wear. For those of you who would compare the two, based on the fact that I'm telling you that they're similar, 34 Boulevard Saint Germain is a little bit fresher. And I like Ambre Nuit because I don't want to call it darker. It's not a dark fragrance. It's not a dark amber by any stretch of the imagination, but in comparison to 34 Boulevard Saint Germain, it is as soft in its wear, the way it wears, but it is a little bit warmer and a little bit darker. It doesn't have the aspect of freshness, and it's a little more floral. So there's a little bit more going on in the Diptyque one. Ambre Nuit is a little more simple. And so the fragrance, even though I'm describing it as sort of simple in its scent profile and nothing jumps at you, it's really enjoyable to wear. And when it fully dries down, and right now it's not in the full dry down, and there is some movement in here, but it's not so different really in the dry down than it is when the fragrance opens up. Maybe in the opening is the point where it's the most different because it has that freshness. There's something a little bit citrusy about the fragrance. But even on my arm now, about 5 minutes later, this is what it smells like all the way to the dry down, I would say. There's nothing complicated going on here. There's no big change. When the fragrance dries down, you're getting exactly what I described. You're getting that soft wearing amber that has this powderiness. There's something a little bit warm and sweet, just a tad, that comes along with what smells like benzoin in this amber fragrance. There is a little bit of texture to this amber, and there's this hint of floral that's a little spiced. So it's an amber. It's one of the more enjoyable ambers in my collection because of this soft floral that sort of comes along with this soft amber, a beigey amber. So it's not Rania J's Ambre Loup. It's not Chanel's Le Lion, which is smoky and leathery. It's not Musk Milano's Tango, which is really full-bodied as an amber. It's much, much more lovely. That's a good word for this. It's lovely, it's cozy, it's soft, and it has a clean aspect to it, but it's not a freshie. And even though I sort of picture this in the fall and the winter, I think it's really cozy. I'm looking forward to wearing this in the spring. I think it would be a perfect spring fragrance, and I'm putting together a list of fragrances that I want to talk about as spring fragrances. And I don't create lists of, or maybe I did when I first started the channel, the best of anything, the best rose or the best leather. The lists that I can create are fragrances that are within a scent profile that I've gotten my nose on. I don't get free bottles. No one's giving me bottles. This is a fragrance journey, my fragrance journey. And by the way, lately, my fragrance journey has taken me down this path of vintage exploration, which I'm really enjoying, and a lot of designer fragrances as well. And Ambre Nuit is one of them. And I'm really enjoying this one. I really like this. It's a great addition to my collection. Not every fragrance has to be daring and totally interesting. This one comes off simple, classy. For what it is, I would say, in my opinion, it's done really well because it stays away from being too fresh. It stays away from being too floral, even though there's this rose with this amber in here. It stays away from being too dark and dense. It's not a dark amber. And so I think for what it's meant to be, it's done really, really well. And I would say that it's 100% unisex. That's always up to the individual. You wear what you want to wear, but there's nothing about this that comes off feminine or masculine whatsoever. And it's just a great fragrance, and I really like this. So if you guys have gotten your nose on Ambre Nuit, whether the old formula or the post-2018 formulation, let me know in the comments what you guys think, and whether you think that it smells anything like 34 Boulevard Saint Germain by Diptyque. I think that the two fragrances are in the same world. They wear the same. They are very similar, with Ambre Nuit maybe being a little less fresh and a little less floral. So those are my thoughts on this fragrance. As always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time. Bye, guys.